honestly, guys notice it more when you're out winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7, they're throwing dimes, and practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that, and the more that the players see it, they're gonna then the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will get severe.
The Cleveland Browns were focused on resolving their quarterback situation until Jason Kelce made pointed comments that triggered a strong reaction from ownership. The response inside the organization was immediate and intense. What exactly did Kelce say that has the dog pound on edge and the front office under pressure?
We've seen that miserable game by the Cleveland Browns. So they throw Joe Flacco in there, and I like Joe Flacco. He did good, but they gave him the resource of all the first-team guys. Then they throw Dillon Gabriel in there with first teams and second teams. So Dillon always is getting protected. The same thing again, they gave this scrub max protection on every play. Yeah, he completed some passes, but let's talk about his mistakes. He's still inconsistent with his throws, but he at least had max protection.
The Cleveland Browns continue to be defined by inconsistency and avoidable setbacks. Even as fans hoped the organization had turned a corner, Jason Kelce, fresh off retirement, offered a direct critique that reignited doubts about the team's direction. His remarks implied the franchise's structure and decision-making remain unstable and recent progress may not hold. The takeaway for leadership is straightforward. Identify core issues, align on a coherent plan, and execute with discipline. For supporters, it's another sign that the problems run deeper than a single season.
They throw Shedeur Sanders in there with the lowest cab drivers you couldn't even get on 5th Street. And I'm pissed off, bro, because the play calling was abysmal. Look, even if you don't like Shedeur, Shedeur didn't even get a chance to be trash. Even if you think Shedeur is garbage, he didn't even get a chance to be garbage. That's how awful the offensive line was. Kevin Stefanski still doesn't want to give Shedeur second strings and first strings reps. Why is that?
Browns ownership's response shifted from measured to urgent. The pattern is familiar in Cleveland. The team once treated Johnny Manziel as a franchise solution, retained Hugh Jackson for a second year despite results, and invested heavily in Deshaun Watson through a costly trade and contract. These decisions reflect aggressive but poorly aligned planning. The outcome has been continued instability instead of sustained progress.
That this was the guy that they wanted to start. He's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dillon Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is, who's going to be the backup in Cleveland? Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they open the season against these Bengals?
Fans still show up season after season, expecting improvement and bracing for setbacks. The usual pattern has been early optimism followed by a gradual collapse. But last season was different. For a sustained stretch, the Browns looked organized and competitive, resembling a functioning team.
Couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously, I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like, they should be on the team, and if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player, I think about myself in a high regard.
The front office entered the offseason confident. Kevin Stefanski was being praised, and the Dog Pound believed the team had made real progress. Then Jason Kelce delivered a pointed assessment that cut through the optimism. Fresh into retirement, the former Eagles All-Pro and Super Bowl champion said Cleveland still looks like a team patching over issues rather than building a durable contender. Kelce's view was direct. The Browns' structure is fragile, and the roster is too dependent on perfect health at quarterback. He argued the team is one injury away from losing continuity and sliding backward. Because Kelce has operated inside a stable, championship-level organization, his comments carried weight with players, media, and fans. The reaction was immediate. People took his critique seriously, not as outside noise, but as an informed evaluation of how a successful team should be built. Ownership also felt the impact. Jimmy Haslam's response shifted to urgency, a sign that leadership recognizes the stakes. The criticism arrives in the context of prior high-risk decisions, especially the fully guaranteed $230 million commitment tied to Deshaun Watson. Watson has missed time and shown inconsistency when available, and the contract has constrained flexibility. Kelce's remarks highlight why depth, alignment between the front office and coaching staff, and a clear contingency plan at quarterback are non-negotiable. The takeaway is straightforward. Cleveland must convert last season's progress into a stable framework, protect the quarterback, deepen critical positions, and establish a plan that survives injuries and short-term setbacks. Without that, the games that fueled optimism will remain temporary.
If you're a betting man, who do you think starts for the Browns at quarterback?
Okay, this is the situation. Kenny Pickett, they actually traded for him. Joe Flacco, no one's bringing Joe Flacco in the building thinking Joe Flacco's going to be the starter. If Joe Flacco is your starter,
You got a problem.
you have a huge problem. And if they were saying Shedeur was the starter as the 5th rounder, you got a real problem too, because he passed over all these guys in these reps in the offseason in shorts, in bikini shorts, Speedos and stuff. Like, no. That kind of stuff. So I'm not that surprised when you put down a 3rd round pick on a quarterback. You do believe he has a certain skill set.
Jason Kelce stated the obvious. Cleveland committed to a quarterback who hasn't played at an elite level in years, and Joe Flacco's playoff run didn't change the long-term outlook. Ownership appeared more upset that the criticism was public than by the substance of the critique. Many fans agreed. They've seen this pattern before. Rosters age, injuries are inevitable, and when a single contract dominates the cap, one setback at quarterback can undermine the entire season. Kelce's broader point was about structure. The Browns prioritized the high-cost, uncertain starter over depth and contingency. The late-season surge masked issues that remain: limited cap flexibility, thin depth at key positions, and an offense that lacks a credible plan B. Fans recognize how quickly a strong defense can decline with injuries, and how an offense without redundancy stalls. The AFC North raises the stakes. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson sustains a top standard. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow returns to contention when healthy. Pittsburgh rarely slips below .500 under Mike Tomlin and wins with defense and consistency. In that environment, Cleveland can't rely on perfect health or peak form from one player. The path forward is clear. Diversify cap allocation, reinforce the offensive line and receiver depth, carry a legitimate backup plan at quarterback, and install a scheme that functions regardless of who is under center.
Given what we saw yesterday with Shedeur Sanders, somebody on the Cleveland Browns is 100% getting fired, probably by the end of this year. The person who's probably going to end up getting fired is Kevin Stefanski, because I know that he didn't want Shedeur Sanders on the team. It was Andrew Berry who made that pick. You can't really go against your GM. Bad things happen in this situation. But Shedeur Sanders is not without fault for what we saw yesterday. This is the play that we saw yesterday that has the internet just exploding, where Shedeur Sanders took like a 24-yard sack. Half of the internet is saying that this is all Kevin Stefanski's fault.
Cleveland showed progress last season, but the underlying concerns remain. Jason Kelce highlighted them directly. The Browns' long-term plan is fragile, cap-constrained, and overly dependent on perfect health at quarterback. His comments focused attention on structural issues, roster depth, continuity in coaching, and a sustainable offensive approach, rather than a single hot streak. That criticism resonated because it reflected what many around the league already see. Ownership's reaction underscored the sensitivity. Jimmy Haslam has presided over frequent coaching and quarterback changes, and external scrutiny carries weight when it comes from a respected veteran with championship experience. Kelce's remarks reinforce that last year's Joe Flacco stretch was a short-term solution, not a foundation. The team still needs a durable plan that can withstand injuries and inconsistency. The practical takeaway is clear: stabilize the system, diversify cap cap usage and build depth at key positions so the offense functions regardless of who is under center. That includes a coherent development pathway for younger talent such as Shedeur Sanders, with defined practice reps, protection, and scheme alignment. Kelce didn't say anything outrageous. He articulated the gap between a brief surge and a credible long-term contender.
I have the faith of a mustard seed. Right, because this is the greatest resurrection since Jesus the Christ. Right, like at some point, Joe Flacco was thinking about getting into TV.
Yeah.
Right, Joe Flacco didn't have a job, and then now you not only come back and start for the Cleveland Browns late in the 2023 season, but they came back around to you. You're now the day one starter for a franchise that just 2 years ago was in the playoffs.
The Browns' quarterback situation remains unsettled. Deshaun Watson was expected to be the long-term answer, but injuries and inconsistent play have prevented him from reaching an elite level. When the team turned to Joe Flacco after Watson's season deteriorated, Flacco immediately lifted the offense and produced results that highlighted the gap between expectations and reality. That a 39-year-old late addition could outperform a $230 million starter was not just a short-term surprise, it raised fundamental questions about roster construction and evaluation. Quarterback depth has been fragile, and the late-season surge masked broader structural problems. Jason Kelce's remarks made that clear. Cleveland is vulnerable if the starter is unavailable, cap flexibility is limited, and the offensive plan lacks a stable contingency. His critique drew attention to leadership and planning as much as on-field performance. Jimmy Haslam's strong reaction reflects the pressure on ownership. The organization has promoted a message of stability and progress, but Kelce's assessment suggested those gains are not yet durable. The path forward requires a realistic approach to the cap, a credible backup plan at quarterback, and a system that holds up regardless of personnel.
What it is that they're doing is they're treating Shedeur Sanders like a fifth-round pick. Right. We're not covering every fifth-round pick in the NFL hoping that he gets an opportunity to be the starter on day one. We felt like, oh my goodness, they got a diamond in the rough. Shedeur Sanders fell to the 5th round. They felt like they evaluated him there, and that's where they picked him. And they're playing the guy that they picked in the 3rd round over him because they evaluate him at a higher level than what they do Shedeur Sanders. And I get it.
The Cleveland Browns are once again creating problems of their own. Their latest misstep centers on Shedeur Sanders. Ryan Clark and Dan Orlovsky have both noted that Cleveland is repeating the same mistakes. The team spent valuable draft capital and is now undermining that investment. This reflects a persistent issue in the organization's decision-making. It's not just a football decision, it's a pattern of self-inflicted setbacks.
Habits and some of the traits that we saw show up in college were very prevalent this past weekend against the Rams. Holding onto the football, catching the snap and not reading the defense, kind of evaluating what the defensive line is doing, and then trying to see if you can go make a play, and that's the concern. Okay, it's 1st and 10. They want a play-action double move at the bottom of the screen. The route doesn't win, and then the protection breaks down a little bit. You're taught as a young quarterback, protection breaks down, find the closest check down. It's right there, it's 1st and 10. He gets to like the 4th part of the
Cleveland Browns have long carried a reputation for instability. Even when it appears they are turning a corner, the organization finds a way to create new problems. Momentum gives way to questionable decisions and progress stalls. The latest situation centers on Shedeur Sanders. It highlights recurring issues in leadership, planning, and execution. Instead of establishing a clear path forward, Cleveland risks undermining its own investment.
There's a lot of players who feel like they should have been picked at a certain spot, should have been viewed in a certain way. But when you get on these teams, it's about developing the team, not doing what's individually best for a certain player. And that's what Kevin Stefanski has to do. And I get it. We want to say all the reasons why what's happening to him isn't right. But maybe we aren't right on the way that not only the entire NFL viewed him, but now the Cleveland Browns view him as well.
Shedeur Sanders was not brought in to be a placeholder or a scapegoat. He is expected to be the long-term solution, a high-upside quarterback with the tools, poise, and Sanders' pedigree to elevate the roster. The focus should be on developing him and positioning him to lead the team forward.
They sabotaged it. They rigged it against him today, putting him in with 3rd and 4th stringers, 5th stringers. You got no shot at quarterback. They threw him in because they didn't want him to make any more splash and put any more heat on Stefanski. It's a desperate, dangerous situation in which he's got no shot, man. He's throwing to Sal freaking Cannella? What? But he got sacked 5 times because he's hanging on the ball trying to make a play, and nobody can separate. Then it comes down to a couple of minutes are left, and Shedeur tries to go on the field, and Stefanski puts Tyler Huntley in place of him. Excruciating to watch.
Shedeur Sanders brings accuracy at all levels, steady leadership, and the kind of composure that comes from handling pressure. Fans were energized, and the league was paying attention. For once, Cleveland had a credible source of hope at quarterback, then the familiar pattern returned. Instead of committing to a clear development plan, first-team reps, stable direction, and a defined timeline, the Browns introduced uncertainty and slowed his progress. Rather than building around him and giving Shedeur a direct path to lead, they split priorities and sent mixed signals. The result is momentum stalled at the very point it should be accelerating.
I also can't blame anybody who says, I don't necessarily trust this coaching staff to develop a quarterback or to evaluate the quarterback position. They have made some really oddball decisions at this position over the last several years, and I don't blame anybody for questioning, do these guys actually know what they're doing?
I don't think that's unfair at all. The thing that I would say is that they're desperate. They're very desperate. Like the entire organization is desperate. And if you really think they're going back to the coaches' offices and all getting around the table after session.
This wasn't about scheme or play design. It was a pattern of mismanaging a young quarterback. From the start, the signs were clear. Shedeur Sanders arrived at camp without priority first-team reps or the confidence-building snaps a rookie need. Instead of a defined development plan, he was asked to compete from behind, treated like a depth option rather than a long-term starter. The message was, earn it later rather than build it now. When game action came, he was put on the field with limited preparation. Protection was inconsistent, and the play calling did little to ease his transition, more a stress test than a structured debut. The approach emphasized survival over progression, creating conditions where mistakes were likely and growth was harder to achieve. Analysts Ryan Clark and Dan Orlovsky highlighted the same points. The issues reflected organizational choices, not a shortfall in Sanders' ability. This was not a rookie collapsing under pressure. It was a franchise failing to provide the support, reps, and clarity required for a first-year quarterback to succeed.
Shedeur moves slowly, kind of trying to see what's going on, and then that creates that sack fumble. So a lot of the stuff that we just saw in college is a big deal. This ball gets snapped at the 48-yard line. Defense has won the rep. Play is dead. Throw the ball away. It's first down. But instead we run and it's a 2.5, 3-yard loss. So instead of being 2nd and 10, we're 2nd and 13, we're dead. Again, here's the opportunity to throw the juke route. Hold, scramble. So some of those things that I was and others were concerned about on the college tape showed itself again. This is not the end of the world, though. This is part of his development.
Cleveland managed to take a highly promising rookie and within weeks put him in a position where he looked unprepared. Ryan Clark called out the core issue. A first-year quarterback cannot succeed without protection, clear situations, and a controlled environment. Dan Orlovsky added that when a young quarterback isn't given structure, support, or coherent schemes, you're not evaluating ability, you're manufacturing failure. That's what happened to Shedeur Sanders. Browns fans weren't just disappointed with the results, they were alarmed by the process. This is a fan base familiar with quarterback missteps, yet even they recognize the pattern. A talented prospect subjected to poor planning and inconsistent guidance. After one preseason setback, the conversation shifted toward maybe Shedeur isn't ready instead of examining coaching, play design, and preparation. The reality is clear. The question isn't whether Sanders is ready, it's whether the Browns were prepared to develop and support him.
Well, that would be a nice exit strategy because he would come up as doing Shedeur a favor.
I mean, one's got to go, right? One's got to go, to clear this thing up.
At some point, but I'm sorry, I know they don't care. If they were to trade Shedeur Sanders now after that preseason performance and he would go on to be good.
The organization has cycled through quarterbacks for years, and the pattern is unchanged. Blame the player, protect the system, and repeat the same mistakes. Fans are split. Some argue Shedeur Sanders needs time and support, while others treat one rough outing as proof he isn't the answer. That division hides the real problem, the Browns' process. This isn't Shedeur failing, it's the team failing Shedeur. Across the league, successful teams create clear development paths. Kansas City brought Patrick Mahomes along behind a veteran and tailored the offense before handing him the job. Houston committed to CJ Stroud, built around his strengths, and let him grow with consistent direction. Smart teams invest, protect, and show belief. Cleveland did the opposite with Shedeur. Uneven reps, inconsistent protection, and unclear plans. Then question the outcome. That's not development, it's organizational mismanagement.
These players have played a tremendous amount of football.
Right.
And I remember last year when Bo Nix came out of Oregon, we talked about all the easy throws Oregon creates.
Right.
The level of the skilled players that are around him. And then we watched Bo Nix acclimate to the NFL game extremely quickly. I see a lot of those same traits in Dillon Gabriel. He gets the football out of his hands. He takes the throw that's available to him. He plays on time. And part of whether or not you get an opportunity to get on the field is the people that you're competing against. And I don't mean this in any disrespectful way to Shedeur, because I'm not only a fan, it's somebody I want to see succeed.
The Browns will likely present this as part of a deliberate development plan, tough standards, resilience building, and testing a rookie under pressure. In practice, it isn't development. It's a damaging approach that undercuts growth. The organization has not shown a consistent model for nurturing young talent, and Ryan Clark and Dan Orlovsky highlighted that publicly. After Shedeur Sanders stumbled in a preseason game, the reaction was immediate. Headlines, polarized fan takes, and sweeping conclusions about his readiness. The front office offered little acknowledgement of the conditions he was placed in. Clark's point was direct. You do not evaluate a rookie by how he looks in a setup designed for failure. You evaluate him when he's properly supported. Orlovsky explained how poor coaching choices, protection, sequencing, and role clarity can quickly erode confidence and stall development. The issue was not Sanders' ability, it was Cleveland's process, which appeared disorganized and unprofessional for an NFL operation.
You made an interesting point. So I tend to have the drip, drip, drip. This was my Johnny Manziel theory, is that everybody makes mistakes, especially when you're young. But if I see 2, 3, 4, 5, then you've got a plumbing issue. It's not just you didn't close the faucet. So there's about 6 pieces of video in college where Shedeur was a little bit of a brat, whatever. Then there's the legendary cringy draft room. Didn't love that as a B prospect. Then there's back-to-back speeding tickets, both over 90, and a missed arraignment.
The NFL is navigating unexpected headlines after a former Browns coach publicly defended Shedeur Sanders in response to reports of multiple speeding tickets. The coach's statement has sparked extensive online debate. Supporters welcome the show of loyalty, while critics question the motive. Sanders now finds himself at the center of an unforeseen controversy, and observers want to know why a Cleveland coach is standing so firmly in his corner. The story is developing rapidly and continues to draw intense attention.
When it came out that he got a speeding ticket, I said it's not really that big a deal. I feel very differently about it now. Over 40 miles an hour over the speed limit, less than 2 weeks after you just got a ticket. I don't know if that's entitlement or immaturity. There's got to be some teams that are feeling very good right now that they didn't draft him.
Observers are focusing on Shedeur Sanders' recent speeding ticket, treating the violation as a measure of his character and sidelining his athletic, academic, and philanthropic accomplishments. The incident, driving 15 miles per hour over the limit in a borrowed Lamborghini, has drawn sharp criticism. In response, a former Cleveland Browns coach has taken the opportunity to comment, even though the franchise is widely viewed as unstable due to its frequent coaching changes and limited on-field success. By defending Sanders, he presents himself as an authority on discipline and leadership. The statement, coming from an organization seldom praised for stability, has nonetheless attracted considerable attention across the league.
You want to defend him a little bit. I thought this was an interesting take.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that you said you were out because of the speeding tickets. To me, that's such a minor thing. You were so high on him in terms of his completion percentage in OTAs, and I thought that was a little aggressive on your part. But with the speeding tickets, I got a speeding ticket the first night of the draft, my first year there. I thought maybe I'd get the benefit of the doubt, but they gave it to me anyways.
As soon as the former Browns coach defended Shedeur Sanders, social media erupted with commentary, resembling the volume of draft night coverage. Posts and opinions appeared within minutes, and criticism escalated rapidly. Detractors amplified Sanders' minor speeding violation, while supporters argued that such reactions were disproportionate to a single traffic citation. Shedeur Sanders received 2 speeding citations, and the minor traffic issue quickly drew national attention. Before considering the former Browns coach's response, it is useful to clarify the facts. Sanders, son of Pro Football Hall of Famer Deion Sanders and a current college quarterback, was twice ticketed for exceeding the limit while driving a high-performance vehicle. Commentary on social media escalated rapidly, with critics framing the incident as a significant character concern, even as the league has historically tolerated far more serious legal transgressions. Stepping into the debate, a former Cleveland Browns coach, best known for a tenure filled with losses and contested decisions, issued a strong public defense. He argued that 2 speeding tickets should not define Sanders' reputation or overshadow his on-field talent and community work, urging a balanced assessment of the player's actions.
I don't love it from a 5th-round draft pick. I don't love that it happened multiple times. But I do think that this is the first time he's been away from his dad. And, you know, there's going to be some growing pains. Now, would I sell my stock on it like you are? Not because of a couple speeding tickets, especially in light of the problems that Brown's quarterback room has had to deal with legally in the last few years. I mean, this is nothing.
The debate quickly shifted from 2 speeding citations to broader claims about integrity, growth, and leadership. The former Browns coach framed the infractions as moments for personal development and urged observers to view them in context. Critics responded forcefully. Some called for disciplinary action, others questioned Deion Sanders' parenting, and a few sought to discredit the coach himself, despite his professional record already being widely analyzed across the league. The reaction underscores an apparent inconsistency in public standards. Fans often overlook on-field confrontations, heated sideline arguments, and other significant controversies, yet they treated Sanders' as routine traffic offenses, speeding without evidence of reckless endangerment, as indicators of serious character flaws. If such minor violations were adopted as the primary measure of morality in professional football, many players would face similar criticism. Sports media amplified the story almost immediately. Television panels dissected Shedeur Sanders' decision-making, treating 2 speeding tickets as indicators of deeper character concerns. Networks aired detailed segments under banners such as red flags and road rage, repeatedly questioning whether the citations might affect his draft evaluation. Although Sanders is already regarded as a first-round prospect, analysts emphasize that NFL teams value discipline and legal awareness when forming final assessments. Many commentators overlook the fact that other high-profile players have faced more serious offenses without similar scrutiny. Throughout the coverage, the former Browns coach defended Sanders, portraying him as a talented quarterback subjected to disproportionate criticism in a culture that expects near-perfect conduct. His argument was thorough and methodical, asserting that the traffic violation should not overshadow Sanders' skills, work ethic, or future potential. Commentators point out that the coach's intervention was not entirely selfless. He recognized the publicity potential. One day he was an overlooked figure from a struggling Browns era, the next he was a trending name across sports media. The discussion quickly expanded beyond Sanders' speeding citations to questions of image management and narrative control. Critics demanded disciplinary measures, public apologies, team sanctions, and formal statements, yet their objections seemed directed less at the traffic infractions themselves and more at Sanders' high profile, confidence, and resistance to traditional expectations. In practical terms, Sanders' brand remains intact. The coach secures renewed relevance, and the episode supplies another headline in the ongoing story of modern football. The next time Sanders is seen in a high-performance car, the debate will likely reignite, focused not on speed limits, but on the broader culture of the league. Meanwhile, new voices continue to join the conversation. Broadcaster Colin Cowherd has already weighed in, offering his own reassessment of the incident and its broader implications.
Breaking news, Shedeur Sanders last night was pulled over going 100 miles per hour. All right, he clocked 101, 41 miles an hour over the speed limit in Cleveland. He will have the opportunity to fight the ticket in court. Now, I'm not exactly sure where he was pulled over, whether or not that it was in Ohio or whether or not that it was in his home state. But typically when you're going 40 over, that's flirting with the line of reckless driving. Folks, I gotta tell you, I don't understand what it is with these young men driving at absurd speed.
Colin Cowherd's view of Shedeur Sanders shifted abruptly. Days after praising the quarterback's poise and skill, he appeared on air to declare that Sanders is overhyped, unfocused, and distracted by celebrity. The reversal was immediate, without any gradual reconsideration. Cowherd now frames Sanders' 2 speeding tickets as evidence of poor judgment, even though he has defended other quarterbacks facing far more serious off-field issues. The sudden, wholesale withdrawal of support leaves viewers questioning the consistency of Cowherd's criteria and illustrates how quickly media narratives can change when minor incidents receive outsized attention.
This is
okay. How much of this is I mean, Jimmy Haslam has his hands all over Manziel, has his hands all over Deshaun Watson, admitted it, man enough to admit it. I saw the reaction in the draft room when they took Shedeur Sanders. It's pretty obvious it wasn't the coach and the GM's pick. How much is this team has 8 last place finishes in 13 years owning it. How much of this is we don't have a very good owner here like Washington, D.C. and the Commanders?
Yeah, I didn't love the owner stepping in and saying, hey, you got to take this guy in the 5th round. And I doubt they'll ever admit to it.
While Colin Cowherd urged teams to move on from Shedeur Sanders, former Browns coach Eric Mangini offered a more measured response. Mangini, whose tenure in Cleveland was marked by mixed results, used his platform to provide context rather than condemnation. Instead of sensationalizing the speeding violations, he encouraged viewers to consider Sanders' circumstances. A 21-year-old quarterback whose life is scrutinized both on and off the field. Mangini acknowledged that the tickets were mistakes, but emphasized that they do not by themselves define Sanders' character or future. He noted the extraordinary attention athletes receive today, combining the responsibilities of quarterback, public figure, and social media presence. Under such pressure, missteps are magnified, and criticism multiplies quickly. Mangini concluded that any evaluation of Sanders should weigh the totality of his behavior, performance, and growth, rather than isolate 2 traffic citations as decisive evidence of poor judgment.
Sometime last week, and then, and I just tweeted that out again this morning, and then today, the Joe Flacco one got posted. So running through this, and then of course we'll still have Dylan will be next, and then Shedeur will come last.
As training camp nears, Mary Kay Cabot is providing straightforward analysis of the Cleveland Browns quarterback competition. The starter has not been named, but she has moved away from her earlier skepticism of Shedeur Sanders and now acknowledges his talent and potential. Cabot explained that if Joe Flacco is chosen to start week 1, it will mean he is the most prepared to play immediately. This approach would also give younger quarterbacks such as Kenny Pickett time to adjust, refine their skills, and maximize their potential while Flacco handles the early workload. She added that a Flacco start would not prevent Sanders from earning the position later in the season. The depth chart remains flexible, and Sanders' continued development could put him in line for an opportunity as circumstances evolve. Cabot also noted that Pickett could win the job for week 1, but he must demonstrate he can integrate smoothly with the offense and perform reliably under pressure. The Browns want a leader who can control the huddle, execute plays efficiently, and maintain composure. Pickett's performances in upcoming practices and preseason games will be critical in determining whether he secures the starting role or Sanders ultimately takes the reins as the season progresses.
Things like that. It doesn't mean that that Kenny can't swoop in there and steal that job by them, but he's really going to have to show that he has a complete mastery of this scheme and this system, and that they don't have to dial it back a lot to put him in there. So these will be some considerations, and I do think that that as the preseason goes along, it will become evident.
Mary Kay Cabot recently stated that Shedeur Sanders is ready, and the Cleveland Browns are monitoring him closely. After a strong showing during organized team activities and minicamp, Sanders has made notable strides in his development. With continued progress, he is expected to return to the field prepared to contribute meaningfully. The Browns coaching staff is tracking his growth, and anticipation about his long-term role is increasing. Cabot added that if Sanders maintains this trajectory and continues to demonstrate poise within the team, he will have a legitimate chance to earn the starting quarterback job. Each practice rep strengthens his case, reinforcing the possibility that his development could benefit both the player and the organization. As Sanders impresses, discussion about his future in Cleveland becomes more compelling. Cabot also emphasized Sanders' advanced understanding of the offense. She noted that his football IQ appears in every drill and that he seems ready to execute the Browns system at full speed. His ability to process defenses quickly and make decisive reads distinguishes him from his peers. With the appropriate opportunity, Cabot believes Sanders could become a genuine difference maker for the Browns. One area Cabot highlighted is Sanders' command of pre-snap adjustments. His capacity to diagnose defensive fronts and communicate changes gives him an edge and reflects high football intelligence. If he translates those reads into consistent connections with his playmakers, he could elevate the Browns' offense significantly. By comparison, Cabot said quarterback Dillon Gabriel is still refining his grasp of complex terminology and play calling. While Gabriel possesses upside, Sanders' comfort with intricate concepts and his ability to manage tight pockets under pressure give him a clear advantage at this stage. stage. Gabriel must sharpen those elements to compete at Sanders' level. Cabot previously reported that Sanders had already earned first-team practice snaps ahead of Gabriel. Her latest update confirms that Sanders is now approved as the Browns' starting quarterback, solidifying the organization's commitment to him as QB1. Expectations are high, and his response to the challenge will be closely watched throughout training camp and preseason. Cabot further noted that head coach Kevin Stefanski authorized Sanders to take expanded first-team reps beginning next month. This milestone underscores Sanders' readiness and the coaching staff's confidence in his progress. As the regular season approaches, Sanders aims to cement his status as the starter, and the competition for that position is intensified. Though Sanders leads the race, Kenny Pickett remains in contention. Cabot stressed that Pickett must prove he can integrate seamlessly with the offense and perform consistently under pressure. His performance over the next several weeks will determine whether he can challenge Sanders for the starting role. With both quarterbacks vying for the top spot, the Browns' Week 1 starter will be one of the most scrutinized decisions of the upcoming season. For now, Cabot's reporting underscores Sanders' rapid ascent, strong football intellect, and growing command of the offense, qualities that position him well to lead Cleveland's offense when the opportunity arrives.